This episode of Top to Bottom is sponsored by Noted Analytics. Are you tired of losing sales opportunities to the status quo? Not seeing meaningful information in CRM to help close deals? Empower your team with Noted Analytics, the first guided selling for CRM platform that uses sales methodologies like gap selling, Medic, and others to revolutionize the way revenue teams capture, evaluate, and measure sales process effectiveness. Start increasing win rates, shortening sales cycles, and growing average sales prices today. Check it out at notedanalytics.com.
And we're live.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to this edition of Sales Top to Bottom. I'm your host, Keenan. I'm with the lovely Becc. Becc, what's your favorite part of the show?
Trying to answer in a quippy way to your questions at the front end. Actually, my favorite part of the show is sales mythology.
But that's going to change from what I understand.
That's a good question. If everyone could go in the comments, what is your favorite segment of this show and least favorite segment of this show? Let's get a tally going. What is your favorite segment? So the segments are email teardown, sales mythology, take it or leave it, the inbox, the challenge, and just one more last thing. What is your favorite? You're going to have to engage today. There are new rules.
New rules.
New rules. Favorite, least favorite segment. No, but my favorite part is trying to answer things in a charming and insightful way right off the jump when you ask me a question about sports that I have no shot in hell listening. Something about Boulder, football, prime.
Prime time.
By the way, I did come downstairs and my dad was there this a couple weeks ago when we did the podcast. I said, Dad, do you know what prime time is? And he's like, yeah, Deion Sanders. I'm like, what the?
Everybody knows.
Yeah.
Everybody. I got to do a blog post on that because I got to figure out exactly how to frame it because how I frame it is going to be critical. But it comes around the lack of courage people and organizations and companies have in how almost everybody is copycat. Everybody's copycat, and they try to get credit for being a copycat. Florida State turned down Prime. Florida State wouldn't hire him. Oh, no, they didn't want to hire him because he had no coaching experience or they thought he was too, polarizing or whatever. So they hired this other dude. So Prime Time's like, fuck it, I'll go do it. Because Prime Time went to Florida State. So he said, screw it. He went to Jackson State and turned that program around and went like 23-4. Right, raised all kinds of money for him, got a new stadium built, like changed the entire program. And now he's here at CU doing it again. And oh, by the way, there were other people that still weren't ready to hire him. So, I have a kindred spirit with Prime. I feel like the guy. All these people who are like, oh, Keenan's too loud, or Keenan's this, or Keenan's that. Fuck you. Fuck you. I know what I'm talking about. So you're fine. Now you're a follower, and now you're following. Now you're getting it. But you had no courage. You had no foresight. You let the stupidest things get in your way. You're a coward.
BTW, my first sports event ever. I watched the entire series on David Beckham. Have you watched that series?
Mm-hmm. No, but I heard it's good. Just came out.
Great. He cooks mushrooms one by one. You know that?
No one's answering your question, by the way, Becc. No one wants to tell us what their favorite segments are. So as the show goes on, everybody, so we can get into the show, what is your favorite segment of the show, and what is your least favorite segment?
No, people, what you do, Keenan. They always talk back to me.
You're the one who asked the question, and they didn't talk back to you, so I'm not quite sure how you process that. But oh well. Okay.
All right. And with that, we're on to the first segment of this podcast, which is a new one, actually. It's called Street Smarts. We do not have a video intro yet, so I guess like Street Smarts, and then you can imagine the bomb. But this is the segment where Keenan and Becc read advice that's told to AEs on how to run discovery and give their take on the advice being given. So the first one is, when running discovery with executives, don't ask a ton of questions and do bring proof points or insight. And what you should do is get agreement on what you want to cover, summarize and share a one-page slide with everything you know, challenges you've uncovered, what you think their desired future state is, and share proof and insights of how you helped customers with similar things. Becc, what are your thoughts on this one?
Keenan has to lead.
Oh, Keenan's leading? Okay, Keenan, this is all you.
First of all, that was really long, and my little ADHD brain has a hard time keeping up. But I'm going to tell you this, okay? Executives do not want to be talked at. They do not want to be talked at. They don't want you to tell them what you see, because they don't give a fuck what you see. They don't care about what other people are doing. They want it. All they care about is their world. It's all they care about. So if you can't begin to engage a conversation with an executive that you understand their world well enough, or not equally to, but you understand their world to an extent that you have credibility with them, they have no interest in you. None. The reason most executives don't talk, and now we have to define executives, but the reason most executives don't talk to salespeople is because salespeople can't talk at their level, number one. But number two, they delegate most of this stuff. So as we grow, more people reach out to me, and I may be part of the decision, but I'm not the one who's doing it. That's Brady's job. Like, I don't want you to walk me through your thing. I couldn't give two shits. That's Brady's job. And so if you get on Brady and you start showing slides to Brady about what you've seen with other companies and what you've seen here and there, she's going to lose her shit on you. I literally sat once with a client, and one of the salespeople, I can't remember, I think they were talking to a telephony company or something, I want to say. And then they said, well, what we said is we did this with a bank once. We did this for the bank and that for the bank. And I sat there cringing because there was a bunch of people at the table and I didn't want to embarrass anybody. But finally, the client did it for me, not my client, the one they were trying to sell to. And they're like, we're not a bank. It's like, no, the minute that came out of the mouth, I was like, oh my God, can I go to the restroom? So no, fuck off.
Becc, what about you? What do you think about this?
Where this person completely lost me is where they said, don't ask questions.
Yeah, I forgot that part. Go back. That's good.
Don't ask any questions. Don't ask any questions, but do bring proof points and insight. I'm like, proof points on what? So I'm not going to let you, especially at the executive level, recommend anything to me unless I'm confident that you have the information necessary to be able to make that recommendation. So there's a certain amount of things that you can learn online. I don't think that you should show it as a badge of honor. People are like, I researched you and here's the facts I learned. I'm like, keep those in your brain, right? You should be doing research. But the goal of the conversation, there's an unbelievable amount that you cannot learn online. So I'm like, not asking questions is probably the worst advice I could
ever on the planet of the world.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Ever on the planet of the world. Mm-hmm.
All right, on to the next question. It's or the next piece of advice is the
third one. The second one is too meaty.
Sounds good. In discovery, you need to understand how the buyer's problem exactly is affecting them. So ask them, how is this affecting you? And what else is affected because of blank? Becc, why don't you take
get them, Becc. Get them.
But that's like saying you need to understand what the problem is for the patient. So when the patient walks in, just ask the patient what the problem is and what the root cause is. And then the medication that they say that they need.
Mm-hmm. Keenan, what about you? What do you think? Want to close this out?
Yeah, no, I think it's dumb. I think it's what I call a self-diagnosing question, right? And you don't get any credibility that way. No credibility. If you're not able to demonstrate what you think it is, right? So if someone says to you, yeah, you can ding me. If someone says to you, hey, we're seeing really low customer service, you should be able to say, oh, is that affecting churn? Not how is that affecting you? The buyer's gonna be like, this person doesn't understand my business.
Yeah.
All right.
What do you mean by low customer service rates?
Yeah.
Keep going.
All right. Well, we're on to the next segment of this podcast, which is another new one called Gaslit. We'll move on to the slide right here.
I was told the names would be decided later, but that's
Where's
okay.
the voice? Where's the voice? Come on.
Oh, yeah.
I got-
Gaslit!
I gotta add element of surprise, Keenan. You know me.
Oh my God. I just right now it's taking every ounce of my self-control. This is the whole don't do to others what you don't want done to you. Oh my goodness. Oh my. Okay, let's go. Keep going.
All right. This is the segment where we ask Becc and Keenan questions that sales gurus strongly recommend AEs ask on discovery calls. And y'all say if it's a self-diagnosis question and score the question. So the first one of today is, if you could wave a magic wand and solve anything when it comes to this pain area, what would it be? Becc, what are your thoughts?
The self-diagnosis question, number one. And where I'd score that is a 1. I'll give it a 1.5. I'll give it a 1.5.
All right, Keenan, this next one's up to you. This question is, what do you think you need to solve this challenge?
It's a self-diagnosing question. If I knew, I wouldn't need you. And if I did need you, I would tell you why I needed it and what I'd tell you what I need to do. So no, and that's a -0.
All right, next one up on the list is, mind if I ask an awkward question?
Yep.
What kind of ripple effects is this having on you? Becc.
It's a self-diagnosis question, what they think the ripple effects are. And I'd score it I'd still score it a 1. I'm going to be nice and give them a 1. Adds no value, doesn't teach them or you anything that you didn't know. And it's just a weird way to ask it. Ripple effects equals impact, extended effects. So just say impact.
All right. And the next question of today is, what are the downsides when it comes to blank? Keenan.
Yeah, I mean, I almost feel like we're on a hamster wheel now, right? So
keep in mind, this was lifted. All of these were lifted from the same guide of the 39 questions you should be asking in discovery to close all your deals, Keenan. It's just a doorway. Keep going.
I've just been trapped into basically tearing down some poor soul. I don't know who it is, and I'm now tearing him or her down. Okay. So ask it again, Min.
What are the downsides when it comes to blank?
So once again, this is a self-diagnosing question. Again, it shows lack of understanding of what the problem is. If I'm a doctor, I don't have to ask you what the downsides are to putting on weight too fast. I know what I'm the doctor, right? So I may ask you, have you experienced, and based on my knowledge, I should know what specific questions to ask you where the downsides are. So rather than saying, what are the downsides, I should be able to say, are you finding it that you're having a harder time climbing stairs? Are you finding it difficult to not eat more than 2 hours apart? Are you finding that you're gaining weight? Are you I know what to ask. And if I don't know what to ask, then I'm asking a self-diagnosing question. I have no credibility, and I'm asking the customer to figure it out for themselves.
All right. The next one of today is, what are the challenges you're facing that you'd regret not solving 6 months from now? Becc.
So, well, and to Keenan's point, he's more nice than me. But I'm like, Keenan, you have to keep in mind, the reason it is called gaslit is this is advice that's being given to AEs.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning, I don't have any sympathy, because if you're going to recommend something to someone, then you should know better. It's your job.
Well, you should know better, but they don't know better because they're a terrible salesperson. You know what it's like? You know, here. This is what I like in this too. Sorry to interrupt, Becc, but I'm going along the journey with you, and this will resonate with a lot of people, and some people won't, but they'll get it. I see this all the time skiing. So there'll be people out there who are weekend warriors, who have parents been taking them, once a week for their whole life, so they can get down the hill pretty well. Like they can get down the hill. You know what I'm saying? Without crashing, they can usually ski even moderate blacks and all that. But their understanding of the biomechanics and the skiing method is a shit show.
Yeah.
So they start telling their friends, and their friends think they're a good skier because they can make it down. Like he watched Johnny ski a black, and he kind of goes fast, and he's going like this left and right down the blues, and he's phrase. So they think he's good. But as Johnny starts telling these fucking knuckleheads what to do, it's clear Johnny has no clue, none, about how to ski. He's just done it and is successful within his little world of I ski once or twice a year. I get down the hill. I don't fall. I'm having fun. Right. So I think that's what we're talking about here. Is there's a lot of people out there who've sold shit. They don't know what they're doing, and they give advice. They don't know what they're doing. So I see it all the time in skiing. In case anybody's wondering, who the fuck are you, Keenan? I'm a level 2 PSI certified skier with my certification, so I know what the fuck I'm talking about.
Tell them. Okay. We are on to the next question, which is, how satisfied are you with blank?
Wait, go back to the other question. I know we're supposed to go back and forth, but I'm not done with that question. Go back to the other question.
Okay. The other question.
Yeah, let Becc finish it, but it's something I want to point out.
Becc, what are the challenges you're facing that you'd regret not solving 6 months from now?
Like the punchline is, I don't know. I don't know. So like, even if I'm correct in what I'm assuming, which is usually not the truth and the point of a seller, I don't know what I don't know. And that's what I'm hoping that you're going to add to the call. That it's like, what do you mean by, like this question for a number of different reasons, but it's like challenges in terms of what? You're not specific. You're telling me you have no idea what I'm going through. It's too high level. You're like, what keeps you up at night? I'm like, in regards to what? I'm sick. I'm worried about work, like on and on and on. But it's like, you can't ask that to your buyer. What challenges are going to hit you 6 months from now? That is your freaking job within discovery, to ask questions that aren't it dead on, but help you understand what are the challenges that they're going to run into 6 months from now that they would regret not solving for now. That is your job. Mm-hmm. But yes, self-diagnosis question, and I give it to Keenan's words, a -0.
So the reason I want to pull this one up, because there's a psychological piece to this question that I find offensive. Not woke offense, but offensive from a selling perspective and a buyer. What will you regret? Or how was that phrase again? Read it again.
What are the challenges you're facing that you'd regret not solving?
That you'd regret. That is so not disrespectful. That's so what's the word I'm looking for?
Patronizing.
Thank you. That's exactly the word it's so patronizing, and the whole point is designed to make me feel bad, or make me feel like an idiot, or make me feel like I might be about to make a mistake. It is so manipulative. It's unbelievable, because you're putting me into a position. I guess you'd almost call it gaslighting in this case, because if I say nothing, then I look like an idiot.
Yeah.
Right? And if I say something, but then I don't want to solve it right now, then you're trying to make me look like an idiot. So you're trying to make me look like an idiot so that you can drive this sale. That is pathetic, smarmy, and it's why people hate salespeople. And if someone ever did that to me, I'd fucking punch him in the nose.
Wait for the next one.
Yes. How satisfied are you with blank? Keenan, what are your thoughts on that one?
How satisfied am I with my water? Oh, that's a dumb question. That's, again, more self-diagnosis. Really simple. You ask me that question, I'm going to say, great. Yeah. Super satisfied. Next up.
All right.
That's all I'm going to say. Even if I'm not, when it's reps ask me that, I just say, I'm great.
Yeah. Gaslight him back.
Yeah.
All right. And the last question of today is, why would you regret not solving that 6 months from now? Becc.
Self-diagnosis, -10.
Oh,
You thought your girl didn't know that the horn was coming. He's got our eye on the money.
oh yeah. Okay. We are on to the next segment of this podcast, which is Take It or Leave It. Ah, yes.
We got two answers really fast, although they didn't tell us. One person says, like it, take it or leave it. Oh, likes. So Craig Mester said he likes take it or leave it. I like Craig. Craig's
No, they're just like kiss up.
And then Muhammad Sheikh said email teardown, but he didn't even say if he liked it or didn't like it. So I don't know if that's when he doesn't like or does like.
Hey.
So if everybody else listening, share what is your favorite segment, and then what is your least favorite segment of this show?
Let's take it or leave it.
Well, this segment is called Take It or Leave It. And this is the segment where I introduce common sales tactics, and Keenan and Becc let us know whether they would take it or leave it. And the first one of today is taking Toastmasters to improve your speaking skills. Becc, why don't you start us off on this one?
I'm going to leave it. Most people will make comments. They'll say like, oh, that person's a good speaker or bad speaker. They'll believe they're not a good speaker because of or staying on track and blah, blah, blah. And while that can be a small root cause, in my experience or my opinion, the main root cause is you don't know the material well enough. So you should be able to present without a deck, sans deck. You should be the deck, quote unquote. So if you optimize for that and knowing material so well, then I find that people will find more value in that with some than the vice versa. An umless speech, but no actual deep insight. So I'm gonna leave it.
What about you, Keenan? Take it or leave it?
I don't know. I've never gone through Toastmasters, so I would be remiss to say I leave it or even take it. But what I will say is, if the bulk of it is what Becc said, things like avoiding ums and how to stand and inflection of your voice and all that, then it's a leave it by 1,000 miles. Nobody needs to be told how to, let me rephrase this, very few people need to be told how to talk if they are passionate about the topic. I've seen some of the most, what else people call introverted people, see a movie they love or see an experience that freaked them out, and they are just fine telling you all about it. So I'd probably leave it based on what Becc said.
All right. And the next one for today is giving AEs credit for renewals and upsell after the initial land. Keenan, take it or leave it.
Sorry. I woke up at 1:00 in the morning last night.
Why? Yeah.
Couldn't go back to sleep.
Why?
Because some chick from Paris was blowing up my phone. And it woke me up out of a dead sleep, and I couldn't go back to bed.
Because he was so excited that she was texting him.
Yes, dead. And I tried. No, I did not respond. But I did have to get up and turn my computer off because I have a Mac, and it goes, and the lights kept coming on. Yeah. Anyway, so I am tired.
He's so pumped to hear from.
So yeah. So what was the question?
The question is giving AEs credit for renewals and upsell after the initial land.
Yeah, I'll take it. I think it's situational, right? So I will take it, but it's not going to be a TVIT. You have to set up the right environment. They don't just automatically get it. They have to be responsible for it. They got to be selling it. If someone else is doing it, there's a AE or account manager or somebody who's doing it, and they just get the tick. No, that's dumb. Of course, if they own the account, they sold the account and they own the account, I have no problem with it whatsoever. Mm-hmm.
All right. What about you, Becc? Take it or leave it?
I'll be quick. I'm going to leave it. And the reason being is they usually ghost afterwards anyway. So I usually don't believe that they had any impact on the close, the actual close, but then certainly the renewal, because that's predicated on that they found a problem and that the problem's actually solved. So if they don't usually find a problem, you're So dramatic. Why? I'll never text you again. I mean,
yeah, that's typical Becc. That's typical Becc. Can't be like, I won't text you once. I will never text you again because I never. Fucking Becc. Jesus.
Hey, I just want to share some insights about your business.
My loss.
Well, the last one of today is strictly outbound SDRs. Becc, take it or leave it.
Take it. It's the bomb. It's the only outbound or SDRs you should have, in my opinion. You're gonna have them.
All right, Keenan, what about you? Take it or leave it.
Leave it.
I didn't have enough time to set up that bait. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I saw it coming a mile away.
Well, hey. Oh, with that, we're on to the next segment of this podcast, which is
the inbox.
Yeah. This is the segment where Becc and Keenan answer questions from our audience. And to help with that, we have our trusty new mailbox.
This is Beck's least favorite segment.
Least favorite segment.
Because the mailbox.
Not talking much today.
And I don't
Be quiet.
And
Everybody in the comments. What, Becc?
I said it's because the actual inbox and the former pictures that are scarred in my memory, and I don't control it, so I don't know what's coming.
You guys, Becc is a control freak if you haven't figured that out.
Oh, yeah. Well, this one is actually to you, Becc. This one's from Danny from Outreach.
Danny from Outreach.
He asked, hate to be work-related here, especially for Becc, because I know she hates those. But Becc, who made the dress you were wearing at the Unleash after party? Also, how do you know Kwame Apaya? He's like legit a celebrity. Becc.
Wait, what was the first part?
The first part is
Unleash after party. I'm curious. I never saw this dress.
Who made the dress you were wearing at the Unleash after party? That's question one.
The dress, Danny, was Alexander McQueen.
Steve McQueen's little brother.
No.
Don't forget the triplet Lightning McQueen.
Alex. Okay, both of those McQueens are pale in comparison to Alexander.
Oh, 100%. Alexander McQueen's crazy. Absolutely crazy.
Dope dress. Dope designer. Love that dress. Alexander McQueen and Kwame. So we actually talked before he went on Love is Blind.
I like that name, Kwame.
So have you seen Love is Blind?
No, couldn't care less.
He's like, yeah. Anywho, so he actually worked for Zoom Info back in the day, and he pinged me for some decks, and we started talking back and forth, and I talked ever since. And then the day that Love is Blind season 4 was released, probably 2 weeks before I went to Paris, and it was released that day, and I started watching that day. And I pinged him. I'm like, what the? Are you on Love is Blind? And a dude went viral, like viral. He was America or People.com. I had to tell him this. People.com, America's new heartthrob. Number one. That's how I met him. But yeah, he had coffee with him beforehand. And then he said, can I come to the session? I'm like.
So did he end up marrying this girl or something like that?
Chelsea, you'll have to watch, Keenan.
Oh my God.
No spoilers here on Top to Bottom podcast.
I'm looking at these two women that are vying for his attention. So, anyways, all right.
Mike and Chelsea, you'll have to watch.
I can't stand that type of television. Can't stand it. Maybe I'll go on Love is Blind someday. I'll just go on.
Love is Blind.
There we go. Did you see the newest season of The Bachelor, The Golden Bachelor?
No.
Oh, it's great. It's everyone's middle age.
Hey,
I was not saying.
And by the way, they're older than that because he was 70. He was 70. I give him credit. I thought he was like 55 or 60. He was 70. He looked
70.
Yeah.
Oh my
he looked
God.
good for 70.
Keenan, you were talking about questions earlier, and you're like, you should ask questions like, do you have trouble going up the stairs? And I'm like, Keenan thinking about that.
No, I don't. I have no trouble going up the stairs.
Yeah, you're holding on to that guardrail.
That rail? Yeah.
And all credibility restored. You can do whatever you want to me.
All right, this next question.
You just hope you're as healthy and as vibrant at my age as I am now when you get there. And that's 20 years from now.
100%.
From now,
Keenan, I'm hoping that I'm alive.
So,
You know?
Yeah.
long from now, Keenan, I can't even,
It is so long. That's my point.
20
Yeah.
years. It's a whole lifetime.
20 years back.
it's 2000,
Mhm. I'll be 75. I'll be older than the guy on The Bachelor.
You'll find a way to like bottle yourself up into an actual bottle. So
I'll sell that shit. Are you kidding me? Let's go.
You'll be 75.
Yeah, dude. I'll be 75 in 20 years. Let that sit in.
Oh my goodness.
I know.
I wonder how many of those posters you have behind you. How big is it to go by 20
I
years?
do the math. It'd be over 1 million.
I'm only 18 years behind.
Oh, all right. So when I was graduating high school, you were being born. Yeah. So when I was 30, you were 12. How disturbing is that?
Oh my gosh.
Mm-hmm.
I think the being born one, like when I'm 5, how old were you? 23?
23.
You can legally drink when I was 3 years old.
Yeah.
Oh my
I was too
God.
old to be a babysitter. Let's just put it. I'm so old. I was too old to be a babysitter.
Correct. And now the roles have turned. I have to babysit you.
Yes. Well, that's what happens. That's how the circle of life works. Changing my depends, we'll be in good shape.
I'm holding onto this guardrail and really holding on.
Well, all right. With that, we are on to the next segment of this podcast, which is
The challenge.
this is the segment where Becc and Keenan break down a challenging subject within the sales industry. And today's challenge is identifying the problem that you solve per buyer persona. Keenan, why don't you start us off with this one?
This is a good one. So, what I like about it is it's the per buyer persona. So I think the first thing you have to do is you have to understand what problems you think this organization has that you solve in the first place. So if using gap selling terminology, if you haven't built a PIC, problem identification chart, you can't do this. You just don't know where to go. So start by building a PIC, problem identification chart. Know what problems that your product or service solves that your customers have. Usually it's going to be 3 or 4, maybe 5 business problems, and then a slew of root causes and a handful of impacts. Once you know what those business problems are, you need to understand how they measured, what the KPIs are, what good looks like, what bad looks like, etc. And as long as you understand all of that, then you simply just ask yourself, who are my ICPs, or who are my buyer personas, I should say, who are my buyer personas, and who do I think would most be impacted by this business problem, right? So if you just really understand the business problem, you're like, oh, I think, the CFO would be more interested or more upset or bothered by this business problem than the developer would, or the CIO, or the CTO, or the VP of development. Or I think the CTO of development would be more concerned about this than the whatever. So that's really the key, is understand the problem you solve and then ask yourself, where do these problems or impacts affect which buyer, and start there.
All right. What about you, Becc? What do you think?
Yeah, so I think most people, or at least most people I've seen, struggle with the generation of the business problem at all. Like that's where they really spend some time thinking about and I think fall down. So the quickest way to do it, in my opinion, is I might have a different slant on it, which we'll see how it goes. But I think you should start with the metric that they are metriced on, like the lagging indicator, and then work your way backwards. Like a problem is only a problem in the presence of a metric. So if I'm a sales VP, for instance, then the only quote unquote problem thing that I'm going to solve for is going to be usually in relationship to a metric. So kind of like Keenan was saying, there's only like 3 to 4 business problems. My core belief is because there's only 3 to 4 KPIs that people are actually metriced on, right? So he's like dead on in that category. So I would think about this person, like if I'm trying to get everyone in the room to agree upon the problem that we should be solving, good freaking luck, because they're all going to have a different problem because they're all metric on different stuff. So like one thing that might help solve a problem for a VP of sales might create a problem, for a marketer, for instance. So I would start with their metric and say, if they're metriced on, quota attainment for a VP of sales, then what is the thing that they want to solve for that would be anchored around quota attainment for a VP of sales? If I'm working with a SDR leader, then I'm like, what are the things that would prevent them from being able to hit their SQL or book meeting quota? If I'm working with a sales enablement professional, for instance, which I think clinically, like, people think are tougher to sell to, it's because they're just metriced on different stuff. Like they're metriced on tech adoption, training adoption, time to first deal, time to full ramp, etc. So I'm like, what are the things that would prevent a sales enablement VP from being able to hit their quota, so to speak, for training adoption? So a lot of things that they want to solve for typically, or at least in my experience with them, is they want to solve for a very centralized methodology is what they say, because they have a lack of adoption with methodology so far. So some of the things that will also help drive it is like quiz questions or deal reviews with stuff baked in, because they're looking for people to adopt it. So I would start with the person's metric and I would say, what is the gap? Like, how do I want to affect this metric up or down? And then back into Keenan's point, like the root cause of what are the things that are preventing them from solving the problem that is the metric, or is a goal in relationship to the metric. And that's how you should set your North Star of defining the problem. Now, impact's pretty easy, and then I'm going to pass back to Keenan. But impact to me is the extended effects of what happens when they can't hit that metric, right? So that's the driving force behind the purchase. So if I can't hit quota, okay, that's a problem in and of itself. But the impact would be what's happening outside of that that's driving me to make the purchase. So like if I can't hit quota, but I can still buy everything, and I don't believe I'm going to be churned, and I'm like the top of the list in terms of quota, I'm not going to solve for it. So it's like without the impact, there's no reason for me to actually solve for it. So it's like, what's going to happen to me because of missing quota if I miss quota for a certain period of time? And to kind of Keenan's point and brilliance earlier, like you should know what those impacts typically are for that persona. If I miss quota for a certain amount of time, I'm going to pick on you, Keenan. What would typically happen to me as a rep?
If you didn't meet quota, yeah, you get fired, go on a PIP, not make enough commissions, not make enough money to stay in the job, be on the lower end of the leaderboard. There's a whole bunch of things. Yeah.
So it's like I should know those 4 or 5 impacts, that typically happen to the person if they can't hit the quota. But I think starting and anchoring up around the metric, then saying what are the worst conditions or the worst effects that are outside of not hitting the actual business metric that would happen to them because of it. And if you don't have one of those, then typically you aren't going to have a purchase, right? So people aren't going to they're not going to buy a tutor, for instance, if they're making a 65, but then they're graded on the curve because everyone else, nothing's going to happen to them if they don't pass the test. So I would start with that metric and define a problem in relationship to that metric for the buyer persona. And every buyer, and I promise I will pass, I get this feedback a lot and it pisses me off every single time, but I don't say anything. I want to be nice. I'm like, every buyer, everyone in the business world has a quantitative metric that answers a qualitative question. If for no other reason, then people don't just like measure on good juju. So like if it's an HR professional, it's going to be ENPS score or amount of churn of employees or amount of tenure of employees or amount of roles, open recs that aren't filled. Like regardless of your sales or product or CIO, they always have a quantitative metric. So you have to start there, in my opinion. Keenan, back to you.
No, I don't know what I could add. I think the original question was how do you sell to different buyer personas differently, and I think you just nailed it. And just because we have 2 minutes, I feel compelled to add something, but I would just reiterate what you said. You need to understand what impacts. So besides what problems are more important to each buyer persona, I would want to understand or believe I knew what each impacts were more important or negatively affecting them. So I remember I had a client early on, and in our discovery, I was being pitted against a number of the so-called big name influencers. This is before I had Gap selling the book. And all of them had he admitted to me at the end of the day, why he went with me is because these cats had a horrible discovery. And he said, I was the only person that got to the fact that there were 3 or 4 non-founders who had been with the company early and had just been buying out the owner to a small percentage. So the owner had 100 and he sold some of this to these not underlings, but these other people to help the executive team have more ownership. And he told me that they had to pay cash for this. So all these people were investing cash. He didn't give it out, right? So they paid cash for this. And then he explained to me that there was this line in revenue where the average multiples went up drastically. So if you sold your business under X, I don't know, we'll say $10, your multiples are 3 or 4. If you get over $10, those multiples turn to 7 and 8. And so they had this whole growth strategy amongst the original founder and all of the people who bought in to get over that number so they could all maximize their whatchamacallit.
Yeah.
So I knew right then and there what the impact to not making the numbers was, because he was one of those people, to him and the other founders. I knew what that was. None of the other people got there. And then what I did was even more interesting, is I started doing math in my head, and I was like, wait a minute. You're not going to get there.
Yeah.
You're growing at 20% year over year, which is fantastic, and you think you have a problem, but that 20% isn't going to get you. You need 27% year over year to get there. He's like, I kind of knew that, but I didn't know exactly what it was. So that's how you do it.
I have a small quip story that I need to add because it revved me up so much. Yesterday, I was on a discovery call and I started asking them, all the diagnosis questions around metrics. So I'm like, what's the metric, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, well, we have 4 segments: commercial, channel, enterprise, and mid-market. And commercial was 10 meetings a month. Enterprise was 6. Channel was 12. And mid-market was 16. And I asked them where they were at to quota. And they're like, well, for commercial, we're at 7, sometimes 8 across the board. And this team of 50, 60 reps. For enterprise, we're at 6 dead on. For channel, we're at 12 dead on. And for mid-market, we're at over 16. We're at 18, actually. So I keep going. And at the end, I'm like, if I was just candid with you, number 1, your results are actually pretty high given your ASP. So you should be proud of yourself. Number 2, I don't really see that big of a problem unless I'm missing something. You're at 7 to 10, 6 and 6, 12 and 12, and 18 on 16. So I'm like, I don't think there's that big of a gap. And then she speaks up. She goes, well, we want to make sure that they close. We want to make sure that they have a higher ACV. We want to make sure that they're better people, blah, blah, blah. And then I asked a question that I will never forget her response. And I was like, it just gave me goosebumps like a lightning bolt. I was like, are you metriced on that? And she was like, yes, we are. And I was like, found it. I'm like, roll me through it, which probably 10% of leaders are actually metriced on that from the SDR perspective. And I was like, how much your KPI is that? She's like, 50%. I'm like, voila. I found it. There was an ad hoc metric that she was metriced on, and that gap was big. And I'm like, oh, so it's not this other one.
It's not the traditional ones you thought it was.
Secondary one. And she was like, how did you find that? I'm like, it doesn't make sense to me. Why would you solve for this unless you just had a ton of cash that you need to burn at the end of the year?
Or they were going to up all your numbers the next year. That's where I thought you were about to go. But they're all going to go up next year.
Well, I did go there because I said, hey, is there an increased metric, blah, blah, blah? And she goes, yeah, well, they usually increase our metrics. So I said, are they in Q? And oh my gosh, I'm turning into Keenan. I want everyone to pay attention here. I said, I didn't say, is that future metric important to you, blah, blah, blah. I said, are they raising it in Q1? Because I'm like, unless they're aggressively raising in Q1, I still don't see. And she goes, no, they aren't at all. We have a guarantee that in 2024, they're not going to raise their quotas at all. So that's when I pivoted to another metric that I'm like, I don't see the gap. If there
That's the problem.
happened historically, but it's not going to happen to you in 2024, and you have that guarantee, there is something that I'm missing.
Yep.
All right. With that, we're on to the next segment of this podcast, which is...
Oh, listen, just one more thing.
This is our last segment where Becc and Keenan give us their closing thoughts. Keenan, what is your just one more thing?
Yeah. I want salespeople I want the entire sales industry to start getting more serious about their job. I want less talking and more reading. I want less talking. I want more understanding. I want less talking. I want more exploration and assessment evaluation. Learn about your customers, learn about your industry, and be able to know more than the next person, not talk more.
All right, Becc, what about you? What is your just one more thing?
I typically don't talk about this. Next year in 2024, please don't vote for Trump. Unless you think it's a good idea that if I were rich and famous, that I can grab you by the yin yang, and I have license to do that if I'm famous. Please just don't vote for Trump.
Ooh, she just turned the show into a political hotbed. You know, I love my politics. I'm always got something to say about politics. They just elected their new GOP just elected the new Speaker of the House. Yeah, but I can't. I'll do it a whole bunch of other places, but I can't take this bait right now. But
well, that's our podcast.
Oh, sorry. Yes, sorry. See, I'm all hung. I'm just so yes. Thank you for listening to. You've been listening to Sales Top to Bottom. I have been your host, Keenan.
And I am Becc. See you next week.
Peace, y'all.
Thanks for watching the Sales Top to Bottom podcast with Keenan and Becc. Subscribe to our YouTube channel for more sales content. And if you'd like to see us live, find us on Keenan's LinkedIn Live every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. This is Sales Top to Bottom, signing off.